Somewhere in Allen Park right now, there's a player nobody's talking about who might end up deciding a game in November. Not Hutchinson, not Amon-Ra, not Gibbs, someone else entirely. And here's the wilder part. Brad Holmes might have already found not one, but three of these players using picks that barely made a ripple outside of Michigan. Welcome back to Detroit Scope, your home for everything Honolulu Blue. Before we dig into this one, we're closing in on 1,000 subscribers on this channel. And honestly, this is the kind of video that gets us there. So if you're new, hit subscribe. And if you've been riding with us, drop a like right now before we get going. Let's get into it. Everybody wants to talk about the stars. Hutchinson gets the highlight reels. Amon-Ra gets the receptions record talk. Gibbs gets the bell cow hype. Sam Laporta gets the tight end debates. And look, that's fair. Those four are the engine of this team, and they earned every bit of that spotlight. But championships aren't built on stars alone. They're built on the guy nobody's mentioning in July, who ends up being the reason you're still playing in January. And I think that's exactly what's brewing in Detroit right now, in three completely different corners of this roster. We've got a former Division II receiver who might be the missing piece in an offense that's already terrifying to defend. We've got a rookie cornerback who fell further in the draft than anybody expected, stepping into a defensive backfield that just got turned upside down. And we've got an international pass rusher fighting for his NFL life for the second year in a row, whose story is honestly one of the most compelling in this entire building. None of these three are the names casual fans know. But if even one of these stories breaks the right way, this Lions team gets a lot scarier than people already think it is. So today we're talking about Isaac TeSlaa, Keith Abney II, and Ahmed Hassanein. And trust me, that last name comes with a plot twist that changes everything about how you should be watching this camp. Let's start with TeSlaa, because his story alone tells you everything about how this front office thinks. Go back to last year's draft. Brad Holmes traded up 32 spots just to get to the third round and take a receiver most national analysts had never heard of, a kid who started his college career at Division II Hillsdale before transferring to Arkansas for his final 2 seasons in the SEC. The reaction from the draft community was basically a collective shrug. Why give up that much capital for a small school kid? Except that criticism missed the entire point. Nobody rolled out a red carpet for TeSlaa. He had to fight for every rep at every level, from a tiny program in Michigan all the way to the brightest lights in college football, and he held his own the whole way. That's exactly the kind of background Brad Holmes has built a career sniffing out. Value where nobody else is even looking. And it's exactly the kind of mentality Dan Campbell has built this entire locker room around. Campbell doesn't care where you started. He cares whether you're still fighting for the extra 2 yards on a 5-yard slant with a linebacker draped across your back late in the fourth quarter of a game that's already been decided. As a rookie in 2025, TeSlaa didn't get a ton of volume. 16 catches, 239 yards, but 6 of those catches went for touchdowns, which tells you something about how he uses his catches when they come. He's listed at 6'4", in an offense already loaded with Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Sam Laporta. Just leaving an impression as a rookie is a tall order. TeSlaa did more than leave one. Heading into year 2, both Dan Campbell and receivers coach Scotty Montgomery have been talking about him like he's already arrived. Campbell has said the kid feels like a veteran, and Montgomery has pointed to how much cleaner his route breaks have gotten and how much stronger he's become physically since his rookie season. Here's what actually changes the math for TeSlaa heading into 2026. Khalif Raymond is gone from this roster. David Montgomery, who used to soak up a lot of the check down and backfield adjacent targets, is gone too. That opens up real routes, real snaps, and a real path for TeSlaa to become this offense's steady WR3. And by every indication out of Allen Park this offseason, he's currently the frontrunner to lock down that job. And here's the part that gets overlooked. He doesn't need to become a WR1 or a WR2 to change this offense. He just needs to be the guy Jared Goff trusts to be exactly where he's supposed to be every single time, no matter the coverage. Goff rewards precision, and new offensive coordinator Drew Petzing's system is built around exactly that kind of trust. Think about what that means for opposing defensive coordinators. They're already worried about Gibbs out of the backfield, Laporta working the seam, St. Brown underneath, and Jameson Williams stretching the field vertically. Add a legitimate fourth red that a defense actually has to account for, and somebody on that defense is coming up uncovered on nearly every snap. That's the difference between an offense that's explosive and an offense that's borderline unsolvable. Now let's flip to the other side of the ball, because the next name might be flying even further under the radar. Rookie cornerback Keith Abney II. Heading into this year's draft, a lot of Lions fans wanted Detroit to grab a big-name cornerback early. Instead, Holmes took Abney out of Arizona State in the 5th round, one of 2 fifth-round picks Detroit used that weekend. The instinct is to shrug that off as a low-value flyer. But this front office has made a habit of finding traits nobody else valued and turning them into real contributors. Think Malcolm Rodriguez, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch. None of those guys were flashy on draft weekend. All 3 became foundational pieces of this roster. And here's where the story gets a lot more interesting than most fans realize. This wasn't supposed to be a wide-open competition. Detroit's presumed starting cornerback duo heading into the season was DJ Reed on one side and Terrion Arnold on the other. Dorsey brings real special teams value. Abney is right there in the middle of all of it. And depending on how camp shakes out, he could end up sliding inside to nickel if McCreary or Ya-Sin claim the boundary job, or he could push his way into outside snaps directly. What stands out about Abney on tape is the traits: quick feet, sharp instincts, and a competitive streak that borders on feisty. He was widely considered a 3rd-round talent before the fall, racking up 6 career interceptions across 3 seasons at Arizona State, plus first-team All-Big 12 honors in his final year. That's real ball production, not just measurables on a stopwatch. And with Kelvin Shepard now running this defense, there's a fresh set of eyes evaluating every player in that room with no preconceived notions about who's supposed to start. Young players tend to get real chances to earn snaps under a staff that isn't married to old depth charts. Special teams could be his fastest way onto the field early. Kick coverage, punt coverage, being the guy willing to fly downhill and finish a tackle in space. Show that consistently in August, and it buys a rookie corner time to develop into a real long-term piece of Detroit secondary. That's genuinely how careers get built in this league. One injury ahead of you, one strong preseason game, one moment where a coaching staff suddenly has to rethink the whole depth chart. Detroit may have already drafted its next long-term starting cornerback in April. And with the Arnold situation blowing the door wide open, nobody outside this building fully appreciates how real that opportunity has become. But the last name on this list might have the hardest road of the 3 because he's not just fighting for reps. He's fighting for his entire NFL career for the 2nd year in a row. Let's talk about Ahmed Hassanein. Everybody who's covered his story this offseason has focused on one thing: the international player pathway exemption. But leading with that misses the more compelling part, because Hassanein might not even need the exemption if he keeps playing the way he's been playing in camp. Start with the football. Look at the room he's competing in. Aiden Hutchinson headlines it. Then DJ Wonnum, rookie Derek Moore, Tyler/Tyre West, and a handful of others fighting for reps. That's a deep, competitive group, and every single rep in camp and preseason matters for who actually sticks on this roster come September. Coaches evaluating edge rushers in July aren't just counting sacks. They're watching leverage, hand usage, discipline, the run fit, whether a guy stays true to his gap instead of chasing a highlight play 3 yards outside where he's supposed to be. Hassanein's game is built on a motor that simply doesn't stop, and that's precisely the trait Dan Campbell has never hidden how much he values. Now here's where his story gets remarkable. Hassanein was actually born in Anaheim, California, but moved to Cairo, Egypt at age 6 to live with his father, and didn't return to the United States until he was a teenager, moving in with his brother, the person who first got him into football at all. That means he didn't put on pads until he was practically an adult, which is almost unheard of for a player who ends up drafted into the NFL. At Boise State, he racked up 24 career sacks across 4 seasons, including a 12.5 sack junior year that ranked among the best in the country, and he became the first player of Egyptian descent ever drafted into the NFL when Detroit took him in the 6th round back in 2025. Because of that background, and because the NFL considers one of his high school seasons during COVID a lost year, the league granted the Lions an international player pathway roster exemption for Hassanein for a 2nd straight year in 2026. For anyone unfamiliar, that exemption lets a team carry an extra player without it costing a normal roster spot, which is why the Lions are working with 91 spots in camp instead of the usual 90. But here's the part of his story that really lands. This isn't his first training camp fighting for a job. Last year, he suffered a pectoral injury right before final cuts and was released with an injury settlement, then came back onto the practice squad in November before re-signing on a futures deal in January. This is a player who already knows exactly what it feels like to fall short of the 53-man roster. And by every account, that experience has only sharpened how he's attacking this camp. With Detroit loading up the edge room even further this offseason through free agency and the draft, the pressure on Hassanein to prove he belongs has never been higher. The goal for him isn't just making the team because of a roster exemption. It's making this coaching staff feel like they genuinely can't afford to let him walk out the door, exemption or not. That's the difference between being a developmental project and becoming a player this team actually needs. 3 positions. 3 completely different journeys. But all 3 point to the exact same thing. This is what Brad Holmes has built his roster around. Players other front offices passed on that Detroit believe it could develop into real contributors. TaSla could add a 4th dimension to an offense that's already explosive. Abney could turn a suddenly wide-open cornerback competition into a hidden gem at a position of real need. And Hassanein might prove that relentless effort can outwork even the toughest roster math. If even one of these 3 stories breaks the right way, this Lions team is deeper and more dangerous than it was a year ago. And given how this front office has operated the last several seasons, building through the middle and late rounds instead of chasing splashy names, it wouldn't be a shock if more than one of them comes through at once. So here's what I want to know from you. Out of these 3, who do you think has the best shot at becoming Detroit's biggest surprise this season? Isaac TaSla, Keith Abney II, or Ahmed Hassanein? Drop your pick in the comments because I genuinely want to see a real debate down there. If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button. And if you're not subscribed to Detroit Scope yet, we're closing in on 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps us get there. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Let's go Lions!